Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about illusions. Now, illusions are a rhetorical device used in many different works of fiction and nonfiction literature featured in our Language Arts 11 course. And we'll reference this device many times throughout the year. So it's really important that you have a good understanding not only of what illusion is, but also how to identify the different kinds of illusions. So, to begin, I want to be sure that you have a good understanding of what illusions are. An illusion is a fancy word for a reference to other people or events. These can be religion, literary, historical, or even mythological. Note though, the illusion that we are talking about is spelled with an A, not an I. Illusion with an I is a word that we'll use for any kind of deceptive appearance or idea, like a magical illusion. Not the same thing. So, writers use illusion with an A to provide context and more in depth meaning to their work. And as a reader, illusions help us better understand the plot, setting, or even the character motivations in a story. There are four types of illusions that we'll see, and the first type is religious. Now, religious illusions can be references to any kind of known religion, not just Christianity. However, we will frequently see religious illusions in or to the Bible in works of American literature. This example alludes to the Garden of Eden, which is featured in the book of Genesis. And the Garden of Eden is a paradise. So the illusion here means that the resort was a paradise. The next type of illusion is a literary illusion, and this can be a reference to other works of literature that can be fiction or nonfiction, a poetry, or it can be a novel, it can be a short story or a speech. And this reference that I have here, this example, is from The Outsiders. And it's actually a reference to a Robert Frost poem called Nothing Gold Can Stay. And this poem compares quickly fading youth to the fading of golden leaves during the fall. Robert Frost was a romantic, so this comparison of nature to our youth makes sense. That's what romantic poets like to do is find life truths and make connections between nature and the lessons that we can learn from them. So makes sense there, but that's a story for another time. The next type of illusion is a mythological illusion, and these are references to myths. So that can be Native American myths, Greek myths, or any other kind of folklore. Now here we have the pretzel stand at the mall is like a siren song. The smell of freshly baked pretzels lures me in every time. Now the siren song comes from Greek mythology. The siren song was so beautiful and compelling that it would entrance sailors to pull away from their course toward the sound. And eventually, this would lead them to run aground, capsize, and ultimately drown. So, not a good thing there. It's not a good thing at all, actually. The siren song is inescapable, though, kind of like a mall pretzel. Yum. Now, lastly, we have historical illusions. These are references to historical events throughout the course of history. So here we have, she told everyone my biggest secret. She's a real Benedict Arnold. Now, Benedict Arnold was a traitor during the American Revolution. So you're calling your friend a traitor here. Not a good thing. Now, identifying illusions can honestly be a little tricky. You will first need to read the passage in its entirety. That's always going to be your first step. And as you're reading, you'll want to make a note of any random proper nouns or comparisons that might seem a little out of place. And if you come across a phrase that you don't recognize, mark it. Take your highlighter, take your pen or pencil, and highlight that or underline it. Any references to a place, time, religion, myth, or another text are likely to be an illusion. Afterwards, I want you to spend some time on Google. Look up the meaning of the illusion. And this is a really important step. If you don't understand the original meaning, then the illusion is meaningless. Lastly, you'll want to put all of this together. You need to connect the illusion to the context of the work that you're reading. So think about it. How do these two ideas connect? What does this tell us about the setting or the plot or a specific character in the story? let's practice. Here I have an excerpt from Patrick Henry's speech to the Virginia Convention, and there are many, many, many rhetorical devices that we can talk about throughout this entire speech, but we're only, of course, focusing on illusion today. I want you to pause this video and read this excerpt of Henry's speech to yourself and unpause when you are ready to move on. All right, did you catch the illusion here? We have a reference to the Song of the Siren in line 2. I kind of alluded to the siren song earlier, but we have, and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. That's actually two separate allusions, and we'll break these down together. So, of course, the siren song is a reference to Greek mythology. I alluded to that earlier, pun intended, in my example. But the siren song, just as a reminder, is captivating, but it's too good to be true. So essentially, here, Patrick Henry is saying that Great Britain is talking a good talk, but this is false hope. So, in the last line here, the last bit of this line, I should say, till she transforms us into beasts. So, this is kind of an indirect allusion here to Circe. So, Circe was a goddess who had the power to transform people into beasts. So, when we take this out of context and we maybe think about what Circe did to people, we can compare Circe to the King of England. So, continued British rule here will likely continue to divide the colony until they eventually turn against each other. It's not a good thing here. Now, I want you to practice identifying illusions on your own. Now, I want you to open the link I have posted here to Elizabeth Cady Stanton's Declaration of Sentiments. I want you to pause this video and read through the entire declaration on your own. And as you're reading, I want you to be on the lookout for any illusions. Be sure to underline or highlight any references that stand out to you and pay close attention to the structure and the ideas that are presented in this declaration. It should sound familiar, and unpause when you're ready to discuss. Okay, let's discuss. Let's look at the very first paragraph. I have the Declaration of Sentiments posted here on the left side of my screen, and then I have the Declaration of Independence posted on the right side of my screen. I hope you noticed that Stanton modeled the structure of the Declaration of Sentiments after the Declaration of Independence, which is why I have them shown here side by side. So, this entire Declaration of Sentiments is an illusion. Let's look at the very first paragraph here. The first paragraph of Stanton's work follows the form of the founding fathers' work. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one portion of the family of man to assume among the people. And then we can go over here to the Declaration of Independence on the right side. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. Now, this isn't a direct word for word copy and paste. Elizabeth Cady Stanton did not plagiarize the Declaration of Independence, but she did paraphrase it. She used this structure and she used the ideas presented in the Declaration of Independence to draft her Declaration of Sentiments. So the point that she's trying to make is that everyone, not just men, as stated in the Declaration of Independence, are created equal. Now, she isn't declaring war like they are in the Declaration of Independence, but rather Elizabeth Cady Stanton is insisting the need for change within society. So her allusion to the Declaration of Independence helps us understand that there are inequalities that have come out in our society. So, yes, even entire works, documents like the Declaration of Sentiments can be illusions.